All right, welcome to the Sharp Mind Show, episode 5050. We made it to the big 50. I'm Nate, the Fit Future MD, your host. Be sure to shop at instracell.com and pick you up a cool, inspirational t shirt today. And like this video, comment down below, let me know what you think about it, and share it with a friend and subscribe to the channel. All right, so of course, I got to talk about my beloved Carolina Panthers now with a winning record sitting at 4-3 after beating the Jets 13-6. Now, this was not a high scoring affair, if you know what I'm saying. But the Jets fought a 0-7, so um basically it was a complete defensive dominated performance by the Carolina Panthers. JC Horn with 2 interceptions. And basically Justin Fields did so bad that they literally had to bench him for Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor didn't do anything better. He threw 2 picks. So Justin Fields got sacked 3 times. Tyrod Taylor got sacked 3 times. Brees Hall couldn't do anything on the ground. 11 carries, 38 yards. Held the team under 100 yards rushing. Not much happening there for the Jets receiving wise. Nobody with more than 3 receptions. Obviously, the negative of this game is that Bryce Young hurt his ankle. But he didn't have a spectacular game either. 15 for 25, 138, and a touchdown. Obviously the big story here is they gave Chuba Hubbard the start. He got 14 carries, but only 31 yards. You could clearly see that he wasn't back to 100%, but Rico came in, had 17 carries for 79 yards with a 4.6 average, and he obviously carried the team as far as offensively there. I say Xavier Leggett had a big game. He had a big catch at the end that kind of gave him like a little more yardage, but he really didn't have that much yardage until Dalton threw him the pass. They gave him that yardage. But he got 9 receptions for 92 yards and a touchdown. So obviously the Jets were trying to hold down T-Mac. T-Mac only got 3 receptions in this game. But it's crazy because Rico gets one catch for 17 yards. They don't ever throw it back to him. That kind of stuff. But overall, a very ugly game. It's 13-6. Not much going on offensively on either side. I wonder how many. I'm just curious how many punts were in this game. Let's see, just to be curious. Yeah, so the Panthers punted 6 times and New York punted 5 times. So 11 punts in this game. And Carolina had 4 punts inside the 20, so it was very effective punting, obviously. But so let me know what you guys think about the Carolina Panthers here. They're now over 500 with a winning record of 4-3. Obviously, the Jets are in line to get the number 1 pick here. And should they just do everything they can to lose out the rest of the year so they guarantee that number 1 pick. Let me know what you think in the comments below. All right, this episode is brought to you by London and the Googly Goo. Be sure to pick up my wife's children's book, London and the Googly Goo, available on Amazon by Meredith Dillon. All right. So, as you know, I've been getting a lot of stuff from TikTok lately. And the big thing out there I saw this morning was basically blaming billionaires for your problems. And the question is, are the billionaires to blame for your problems? And my answer is obviously no. Let me know what your answer is in the comments below. But, and this is why I say no. And so I looked up. So it says, my question was, what president did the trade deal with the world that caused factories to move out of the U.S.? Now, the original person to open trade with China was Richard Nixon back in 1972. And so this came, through three presidents. So Nixon, Carter, and Reagan all in their way increased trade in the world, right? But NAFTA was thought up under George Bush the first, and then signed into law in 1994 under Bill Clinton, right? Bill Clinton supported China going into World Trade Organization in 2001, and so that opened up the floodgates to manufacturing in China, which led to what? Less manufacturing in the U.S., right? So that leads to a decrease in the middle class, right? So now we have upper class billionaires that were able to get their product from China, bring it to the US, Apple, Microsoft, that kind of thing. Or you have the workers that were left, which is us in the US. So basically, the person to blame, if you're going to blame an individual person, is Bill Clinton, right? Who is actually a very popular president compared to other presidents, right? So, but I am going to go through the argument of why people think billionaires are the problem. But Bill Clinton and NAFTA is the reason that we don't have jobs in the US anymore, and is the reason Trump is using these tariffs so highly and putting pressure on US companies to bring their factories back to the US. Now, their factories in the US probably won't have as many US workers as you would think, but you have to ask yourself, is it better to control the factory in the US or have stuff built in other countries and brought into the US? Basically, are you keeping the money in the US or are you keeping the money out, somewhere else, right? But so I will go through the argument of why people think billionaires are to blame. Number one is wealth concentration. So if you have a high concentration of wealth at the top, then theoretically they would have outsized influence on politics, media, and the labor market, right? Obviously, they talk about tax loopholes, how billionaires pay less percentage in tax than a regular person. But I think if you make less than $50,000 right now, then you're paying like a 12% tax rate, which is, to me, it's still a little high because you're paying more than you would pay Jesus. But if you pay Jesus 10%, you figure the government doesn't deserve more than 10%. Just my opinion. So do whatever you can to make sure it's not 10% or more. But the way that the system is set up that if you do certain things, you get tax breaks, right? So theoretically, those things would offer more housing, more jobs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then the billionaire would have loopholes, right? But 90% of the taxes are paid for by the top 1%. So keep that in mind. Also keep in mind that the top 1% starts at like $400,000 or something like that. So it's not like they're not billionaires in the top 1%. So keep that in mind. But so the next one is corporate power. Basically, billionaires lead, so most of the billionaires own 10% of a big corporation and they have the controlling interest in that corporation. Um, like an Elon Musk or, a Bezos or whatever. Um, and they basically will control wages and um, whether the jobs go offshore or onshore or whatever, that type of thing. So that is the argument against the billionaires, right? And why they are your problem. But the real problem is that the jobs went to a different country. That's the real problem. So the solution is to try to bring them back. How you try to bring those jobs back is the debate, right? So how would you bring jobs back to the United States so that we actually have a middle class again, right? So if it's not tariffs, what else would you use? Let me know in the comments below. All right. So gonna move on to life coaching today. And we have a question. And the question is, who are you taking financial advice from? And are they living the results that you want? Right? So I'm gonna look at so when you were younger, they had this show on called MTV Cribs, right? Rest in peace, MTV. MTV no longer exists, right? 45-year run for MTV. But so MTV basically had this show on called MTV Cribs, and then basically you would see how these rich people basically had these nice cribs, right? And so that being said, basically when you were younger, that's what you wanted, right? You wanted the big crib, you wanted the nice cars, yada, yada, yada. But then all of a sudden you realize when you got older that, oh, these people that did all that, they went broke. And you're like, oh my God, I thought they were rich. How could they ever go broke? Well, they went broke because they didn't have money management skills, right? And so do you want to follow the person that's flashy, that's going to be uh, basically broke again? Or do you want to follow somebody that does things the right way, does it slow, gets financially free in 5 to 10 years versus, someone that got rich quick and then went back broke? All right. So you have to choose which one you want to follow. There's people out there that tell you to go into huge amounts of debt, right? Well, debt increased risks, and basically everyone pays what's called ignorance tax, where stuff you don't know about, right? So, you know, if you never own a rental property and all of a sudden you go buy a big, huge apartment complex, you're going to be paying a big time fee and ignorance tax, where you could have started smaller and learned, right? So maybe even learned that rental properties are not for you, right? For some people, rental properties are, and times are different now. It's harder to find rental properties, right? That kind of thing. So keep that in mind. Who do you want to? You need to figure out who you want to follow, right? Do you follow a Robert Kiyosaki who says, I have 1.2 billion in debt, whatever, or do you follow someone like a Dave Ramsey who says, I'm never borrowing money ever, right? I don't even have a credit score, right? So I follow somewhere in between, right? Because I choose to use what the system gives me to make extra money, right? So um, obviously you have a tolerance level for debt, right? And if you start from the bottom, which is where I started, there is no risk, in my opinion, to try to go to the next level because you're already at the bottom, right? So if you lose, guess what? You're still at the bottom. So, but that doesn't mean that the ignorance tax is not going to be there, right? So, like when I went to flip this house, I was like, oh, we'll get it done in 3-4 weeks, no problem. we're just gonna do X, Y, and Z, and it'll happen. No, 6 months later, we're still renovating the house, right? You know, it's wintertime. You get only an hour and a half of light, in winter, like here in North Carolina, right? And then it's too cold for stuff to dry, and you know, uh, yada yada yada. So keep that in mind. There's always an ignorance tax when you do things. So um, keep that in mind. Let me know who you would follow. You following Robert Kiyosaki? You following Dave Ramsey? You following Grant Cardone? You following me? Who you following, right? Say, I'm going for financial freedom. If you're interested in learning how to do that, hit me up for life coaching and we'll change your life, right? All right, last thing. We got the quote of the day for the last thing. And it says, you can't pour from an empty cup, but you can refill it with purpose. You can't pour from an empty cup, but you can refill it with purpose, right? So I think a lot of people, you go in the area that you're in, you find the best job that you can get, right? But that job is not necessarily going to fulfill you in here, right? So for instance, most places you go, a sales job is probably going to be the highest amount of money you're going to make, especially if you're in a good economy. But you selling something is probably not going to fulfill you internally, right? That's not going to be the thing that says, okay, I've done my purpose or whatever. Like, so, if your cup is empty, you have to fill it with purpose, right? So, um, the best way to do that is use that job that makes you more money for a few years to become financially free. And then when you're financially free, go do the job that actually would give you purpose. So that's what I'm doing, right? And if you choose to follow me, that's the way I would tell you to go about things, because you can't get financially free on $7.50 an hour, but you can get financially free on $50,000 a year, right? Like, so keep that in mind. Obviously, the more money you make, the faster you can get to financial freedom. So if you're really only sacrificing 3 to 5 years, 3 to 5 years is nothing to be financially free. So um, let me know what you think of this comment down below. If you're losing in life right now, refill your life with purpose and you won't be losing, right? I'm Nate and I'm a life coach. If you're looking for life coaching, hit me up in the DM or sign up for the link below. Shop at InstaSell.com, pick you up a cool inspirational t-shirt. Check out my wife's book, London and the Googly Goo. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment down below. Let me see what you thought about the video, and we'll see you in the next piece.